Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see we've got Tanya here. Only one person so far, so I'm going to wait for Cindy to join us, and she's our guest today. So let's wait for Cindy. Hi, Ariella.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Cindy. How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
I'm good. So I think we should give people a few minutes to roll in here
Awesome.
before we get going.
Okay. Out of curiosity, lighting looks very low on my side. Is it all right on your end?
Yeah, I think it looks all right.
Okay.
I can see the books. I can see the plants.
Children. I know you have twins. I just got twin plants here. Non-identical.
Neither are mine.
That's awesome. Are they fraternal?
Fraternal, a boy and a girl, and
That's really
they will be 3 in March.
so. Is that it? One stop shop. Like we're gonna do this once. We got two, and now we're wiping our hands clean of kids.
No, quite the opposite. My wife is pregnant, and we are expecting another one
Congrats.
pretty soon, actually.
That's very exciting.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank you. It is, yeah, it's very exciting. It's a lot. Um, but yeah, the kids are amazing. They keep us very busy and entertained. Um, it'll be interesting to do it again. Go back to that newborn stage.
Yeah.
My,
Just one single baby on.
just a single, just one. That's right.
Well, that's very exciting. Congrats, Daniel. That's great news.
Thank you. Okay, I see we've got some people in, so maybe we can get started, and anyone else who joins us will just hop on in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so to everyone who's here, thank you very much. My name is Daniel. I'm one of the co-founders of Epilogue. Epilogue is an online estate planning company. We help people create wills, powers of attorney, and other estate plan documents online. And in January, we teamed up with some great partners to do a challenge of sorts. January is a time when people make New Year's resolutions and set out to do all kinds of things. And we thought um, we should we should try to help people to start small. People make grand resolutions about really big things that they want to achieve, and uh, sometimes those don't get done. And so we thought if we could sort of narrow it down, pick a few little things that we can help people with, that would be a great way to start the year. So the first partner that we have is Paper and Coin, and I'm joined by Cindy, and Cindy is a financial planner, and she does coaching for people who sort of need assistance on budgeting and sort of all things related to money. And so I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
Like, very
So
happy to be.
so I will maybe the right first step is to let you introduce yourself. So I gave a bit of a hack introduction to what you do, but I'm sure you can probably say it a lot better.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Cindy. I am working as coaches at Paper and Coin. It's something I do independently as well, but it's been my passion work in this industry and help out millennials in particular. That's the demographic that Paper and Coin focuses on. Uh, it's the demographic that I'm part of, and it's the one I always aimed to cater to because my whole journey into the finance world started with the very apparent need among us for financial literacy. And so I started from a background in science. I went to university for a physics degree, actually. I wanted to get into education. And then when I graduated, I'm like, well, I'm an adult. Why don't I know how to do my taxes? I don't know what a TFSA is. I don't know what any of this means. It's just jargon. And I noticed a very similar sentiment amongst my peers. And so I took some financial planning courses for my own knowledge, loved it, made the switch, and have been committed to that ever since. And it's a kind of a theme that comes up often with my clients, and what keeps driving me in this industry is that need for financial literacy. I find that our demographic very much wants to learn how to do things on their own, be self-sufficient, because we haven't been taught. And without bashing the banks, they don't really go out of their way to teach us any of this. So that's what I aspire to do, is provide that basis of literacy and that one-on-one coaching.
Awesome. Okay, so that's a great kickoff. So before I started Epilogue, I was a lawyer who practiced in the areas of corporate tax and estate planning. And so I think there's a lot of parallels with estate planning and financial planning. And people don't know where to start. And everyone thinks that everyone else knows what they're doing, and they're the only person that doesn't. It's sort of a strange thing. You know, there's a lot of shame or embarrassment or guilt that comes along with feeling like you're sort of at a place in your life where you should know something, or you should be doing something and you haven't done it yet. So I saw a lot of that in the estate planning world, and I'm wondering if you see a lot of that in the financial planning world as well.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And again, what sort of took me to where I am now is the fact that I did recognize that lack of literacy and feelings of shame, because you don't know, you're afraid to admit that you don't know and get started. But then at some point you wake up and you're 33 and you know you have your first kid on the way and you need to buy a home, and you're like, okay, well, it's not cute to just bump into walls and figure it out as we go anymore. Like, I need to get this under control. But it's taking that initial step that is often quite terrifying, because yeah, we weren't taught this in school. So realistically, unless you grew up in a household that made these conversations quite regular, and your parents talked to you about money and, you know, implemented some practices to help get you going with understanding budgeting, there's really no way for us to have learned unless we went out of our own way to do it for ourselves, which many haven't, or they have, but there's just so much information out there that it becomes overwhelming to sift through it. So there is a lot of feelings of confusion, of shame for not knowing, of guilt for not having started sooner. But again, I need to stress that pretty much the majority of my clients are coming to me with this story. So it's, you know, the long story short is that this is the majority. Majority of people are feeling this way, are feeling lost and shameful about being the only one, but they're not. So this is a common story.
Yeah, it feels a lot like when you're if you're in a conversation with someone and now the conversation has gone too long that you can't actually ask them what their name is anymore. And so people have that feeling, which is like, no, I'm too old to go in and admit that I'm doing my first will, or I'm too old to admit that I've never made a budget and I don't know the first thing about budgeting, and there's a lot of embarrassment and shame, and it's unfounded, because those people are all in the majority of people who haven't taken those steps yet. And so I'm sure there's some comfort when you start the process. And one of the things I want to ask was, how long does it take usually when someone comes in to get to that point where they start to feel really better? You know, they feel a lot better about the steps that they've started to take and sort of the journey that they're on towards financial literacy.
That's a good question. And truthfully, it doesn't take too long. A lot of that fear comes from simply not knowing what is going on with their money. That's one of the more common themes, is like, I just don't know where my money goes. I feel like I'm out of control. I don't have enough money. So it really comes down to actually just looking at the numbers and paying attention. And so they have to do that when they talk to me. And so immediately there's a sense of this cathartic release of just unloading all of their fears and shames and worries onto, oh God, it feels so good to have said all that. And so there's a sense of relief right there, because it's usually the first time they're saying these things out loud. I would say it's pretty common that most of us aren't just engaging in in-depth financial conversations with our friends. And so talking to me or another coach is usually their first time, and there's an immediate sense of relief. And then that is furthered once we actually dive into the numbers and see what's going on. And whether the numbers spell out a horror story or one of optimism and potential, the result is usually the same. It's that sense of, oh, well, that makes sense. Now I can see what's going on. Or, oh, right, I had no idea I had the potential to do so much more. So a lot of that just comes from not having paid attention because you're fearful of what you might find out and you don't want to look at the numbers. So it's facing the debt demons, the money demons, and addressing your money wounds that provides that initial sense of relief, which comes quickly once you just face it.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So a reminder to anyone who's here and watching, if you have any questions for Cindy, send them through and I'll ask them. And while we wait for some to come through, I mean, I certainly have lots. So someone comes in and they come to see you, where do you start? What are the basics? What are things that either people can do on their own before they ever engage a coach, or what are the first few steps that you take when someone actually sort of takes that positive step to come in and have someone help them through it?
Well, the first step is very much paying attention and knowing your numbers. So whether you're doing it with me as your coach or you're doing it on your own, it has to be engaging with the numbers as they are. So I think a lot of people who try to attempt a budget for the first time are working from a place of ideals. Here's what I'd like to be spending, or in this category or that, as opposed to writing down, here's what I actually spent in each of these categories. So immediately they're already trying to be like, here's what I want for myself, but they still refuse to see what's actually going on. And so it has to start with addressing the numbers as they are. And if there is a problem in a particular area of your life, a spending category, you need to see that as it is before we can address it. So it very much starts with knowing your numbers. You have to be able to account for every dollar that's coming in, every dollar that's going out. Where are they coming from and where are they going? I can't do anything for a client unless I know what's going on with their numbers. And likewise, if you're doing this on your own, you have to face the numbers as they are without trying to fudge them right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's honesty, right? It's hard. It's very hard to sort of to actually just dig in and say, okay, so like, what are we working with? Like, what did I spend the last 6 months? Not what do I think I'm going to spend next month? Like, let's look back. Like, what do those numbers look like? And what can I do with that? Like, what can I take from that? So we have a question that came in, so I'm going to read it out. So this one's from Sheena. So it says, I am a freelancer, so it benefits me at tax time to put money in my RRSP, but then I can't access it. I would like to max out my TFSA first so that I can save to buy real estate. Do you have any advice on this, and any general advice for tax season for freelancers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sheena. Very well put. And I'll say right off the bat, the fact that you're a freelancer and taking advantage of your RSP, that is great. As freelancers, we are too keenly aware of tax time and what it can imply. And RSP can be a very helpful tool to reduce your taxable income. So great in that respect, right? But then you're faced with well, how do I access my money? It feels a bit locked in an RSP. Not entirely true to say that it's locked in. You can still withdraw money from an RSP. It is, of course, going to be taxed as regular income and taxed at source right away, anywhere from 10 to 30% by the CRA. So, if you put 5K into your RSP and you need exactly 5K, you won't be able to access it from straight withdrawal from your RSP due to those withholding taxes. But you said that it's for the purposes of buying a home, buying real estate. So an RSP has a program called a home buyer's plan that effectively allows you to borrow your own RSP money for the purposes of buying a home for the first time, or building a home yourself for the first time. And that allows you to borrow up to $35,000 from your RSP, and you'll have to pay it back over the course of 15 years. So 1/15 of what you took out is owed each and every year. So that is a way that you, Sheena, can access money from your RSP, but you did mention a TFSA. And I'd be remiss not to, mention how great of a tool that it is, because it becomes a much more flexible investment account for you to take the money when you need it without having to worry about any taxable consequences whatsoever. So Sheena, now the question becomes, is this money definitely for the purposes of buying a home? And is it more important for me to save tax today versus down the line? If it's important for you to still lower your taxes today, I think you're making a good choice with using the RSP to lower your taxable income, because you can still access the money for the purposes of a down payment down the line, via your home buyer's plan. But if you're not absolutely sure that that money is going to be used towards a home, you suspect you might need it for something else, and you don't want to have it in RSP, TFSA is a great way to go. But of course, you don't get the same benefit of lowering your taxable income up front. So there's a little bit of just weighing the pros and cons of what's more important. Is it tax savings today, or is it tax savings down the line, which the TFSA can provide for you? Because if it's invested and invested very well, let's say that money doubles, you can withdraw all that money, absolutely no taxable consequences. So that's great. But again, it's a cash flow question. Is it important to deal with, the savings today or eventually down the line? I hope that was helpful.
It was for me. So while we're on this topic, one quick question for you that comes up. So RRSP and TFSA, people know all about them in terms of they know that they exist. It's common. The RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan. I certainly didn't know about it until I had kids, and then all of a sudden I found out about it, and I was like, wow, this seems great. Can you talk a little bit about what an RESP is, and for parents out there, the benefit and whether or not you recommend it to people that come in and speak to you?
Yes, absolutely. To start, I do recommend it. When you have kids and saving for the future is important, it's a great way to do that while being supported by the government. So you certainly could save for your children's future and education using an RSP or a TFSA, and eventually you'll find a way to take the money out and pass along to them. But the RESP is specifically built for this purpose and incentivizes parents by matching your contributions with grant money, and depending on your household income, also an additional bond. So the government is willing to match up to $7,200 in free grant money for you over the course of the lifetime of an RESP, with the potential for additional money through the bond depending on your household income. So really it's just free money from the government. If you intend to save for your child anyway, this is an investment account that's going to make it lucrative, first of all, because you're getting the cash there. And then, of course, that's invested. So not only are you getting free money from the government, but that itself is also going to grow with your investment. And it also makes it very tax efficient, because now, as opposed to using your own savings accounts, for example, and possibly having to deal with, capital gains or other taxable situations when you have your own investments, all of that is kind of passed along to your kid. So you're putting money into the RESP, and then when the money comes out, it's coming out in your children's hands, taxable in their hands. And usually when they're withdrawing, they're teenagers, they're 17 or 18, so they're either not making an income or making very little income from a part-time job. So despite the fact that the money's taxable, they probably don't owe tax anyway. So now you have effectively built up this huge investment account for your kid that they can now withdraw and essentially have to pay no tax on, because their income is just either not there or it's so low. So it does become a very tax efficient tool. And again, I stress, it's free money from the government. Right. So a great opportunity to take advantage of those grants and get some support.
Yeah, absolutely. When I found out about the existence of it, I was surprised sort of to see. Really, it's free money. So it's pretty great. Next question comes in from Tanya. So Tanya is 22 and she graduated in April of 2020 and started a full-time job. She's currently repaying her tuition debt, but also wants to save for long-term goals. What do you recommend?
That's a really good question. That's one of the biggest questions I get as a coach is, well, okay, I've got debts, but I also have goals that I'm trying to save for. Which do I do first? How do I prioritize one over the other? I mean, long story short, you find a balance between doing both. But what I'll say to this is you want to start from a place of at least having an emergency fund for yourself. So while you're carrying debts, before you think about diving into investments, for example, you need to have a cushion of at least 3 to 6 months worth of your household expenses. And again, you don't know that number unless you face your demons, look at your numbers, get real with what's needed. So 3 to 6 months in an emergency fund, have that tucked away, not invested. Because this is emergency money, you don't know when you'll need it. and you don't want to have it locked up. So I would recommend a regular savings account or high interest savings, but not locked up in any sort of risky investments that might cause it to decrease in value. So great. If you have an emergency fund, that's awesome. Now you want to focus on debt repayment. What I'll say to that is if you only have the student loan, typically, interest rates are pretty low there. Depending on the amount of debt that you have, it may take a very long time to pay off, or you might be in a position to expedite that and pay it off quickly. If you can do so and expedite that, I would say focus on that before investing. But the moment you have any consumer debt whatsoever, I'm talking about credit cards, high interest debts, pretty much anything over 10% is a red flag in my world. I would say don't even think about investing. You want to focus on debt repayment. Why? Well, yes, of course it's important to do both, save for your future, but you don't want to be taking on additional debt to do so. And before you invest, you have to appreciate the fact that the debts you carry are themselves investments with a guaranteed negative rate of return. So you have invested in this product that is guaranteed to lose you 19.99% every single year on that credit card. Yeah. So if you're making the choice of weighing, do I pay off this credit card or do I start investing because that's what I should be doing at my age, you have to think, does this investment, is it gonna, match up to what I'm guaranteed to lose from carrying this debt? And the only way you can break even is if this investment is going to earn you a 19.99% rate of return. That's just breaking even. You haven't even profited yet. But find me an investment that guarantees that kind of rate of return. I'll go running towards it too, but that just doesn't exist. And if anything with investing, you put yourself at risk of even losing more money. So I would say take it with a grain of salt. If you're carrying debts, I know there's a sense of FOMO about wanting to invest, feeling that you should invest right away because everyone else is doing it, because it's what you should be doing at your age. But it is very subjective to what you have going on. If you're carrying a lot of debts, it's more important to, first of all, focus your savings efforts on having that little emergency fund so you're not falling victim to taking on more debt when something happens. But then otherwise, focus all your efforts on paying off those debts. Of course, I'm not referring to a mortgage here. It's not so easy to just pay off a mortgage in full, sometimes impossible. And I'm not asking you to wait 35 years to finish your mortgage before you save a single penny. Mortgage is kind of the exception here. I'm talking mostly about consumer debts and higher interest loans. So I would say to prioritize debt repayment before investing. And hopefully that's helpful of just shedding that stigma that you're not doing enough by not having invested yet. Because if you're carrying debts, you're doing the right thing by really focusing on just eliminating that as quickly as possible.
Okay, I think that's an excellent answer and very helpful for sure. So we've got another question coming in, this one from a young parent who says, I don't think financial planning, budgeting, or any of these important topics are taught in school. How can a parent introduce some of these things to young kids and when?
That's a great question. So I have started to implement little things with my nieces. I don't have kids, but I do have 4 nieces, and I try to bring it up as much as possible. So, for example, buying them gifts on their birthday or Christmas. I don't buy them stuff anymore. They're old enough now where I can say, here's your budget. Let's go to the mall and decide how to spend this. And now I am forcing them to consider, how much can they get? Like, what is a dollar really worth? Children don't really have a concept of what a dollar gets you, how far it can go. And so very quickly I started to notice how fast they would put things back on the shelf, because I'd be like, okay, well, if that's what you want, that's great. But, $50 minus the 20 to buy this means you only have 30 left. You might only be able to buy 1 thing more or 2 things more. And they're like, oh no, but I want lots of stuff, or whatever it may be. Or they make the choice for themselves to choose quality over quantity and buy 1 thing instead of many little things. So things like that, and even grocery shopping. So when I'm at the grocery store, I do a cost analysis on everything. Okay, this jar of feta has 500 grams for $7 versus like this one, which is $600 grams for whatever, $5. And then I'll sort of weigh the pros and cons. I'll do the math and be like, okay, well, I get, the better deal on this. It's having those conversations out loud with your kid and be like, I'm choosing this one instead of that one because it makes more sense, or, because the price is better, you get more bananas per dollar than this deal. So I think it's just, little conversations about your thought process. How do you as a parent and adult make the choice to buy something or set it aside? And just saying that out loud in front of your children, just allowing them to see your thought process. There are ways to just very directly provide financial literacy and help them out with, some mathematical activities. But I think it's important to just literally let them understand how mom and dad thinks when they handle the money and what's going on in their head when they make a purchase. So have those conversations out loud. I know as a kid, I had no idea whether my family was doing well or not. It just wasn't discussed. I didn't ask about it. But I was always curious, and I think it would have been helpful if maybe they had some more of those conversations out loud to help me understand.
Awesome. That's a great answer. That's really helpful. So I see we've only got about 3 minutes left, but I have one more question that I want to ask. So I'm hoping I'll just ask it and we'll see if you can give a quick answer if possible. So someone who has looked at the numbers, they feel pretty good about where they're at, and they're ready to start investing. They've got some money and it's sitting around and it's not doing anything for them, and they're ready to start making it work for them. So there's a lot of different options out there about how to go about investing your money or who to invest your money with and stuff like that. So for someone who is totally new to this space, what do you tell them in terms of whether it's finding an advisor, whether using a robo advisor, like what's the right place? Or maybe it's not a question of right and wrong, but where's a good place to start, either to educate yourself, sort of to understand what options are out there, or to take the next step and start to sort of narrow it down in the hopes of picking something?
That's a really good question. And again, usually I would start to question whether it's important to them to really understand the inner workings of investments. Do they care to have any sort of hands-on management with the money? And if they do, okay, well, it's more of a DIY situation, but you want to start slowly. So there's a lot of robo-advisors out there. And again, I don't want to name drop, but you can imagine, a couple platforms out there that make things very simple and automated for you. They'll ask you questions about your risk tolerance. So these are questions about, the purpose of the money, how soon do you need it, what are your reactions to risk, and how would you behave in a situation where there's loss. And so they use your answers to determine an appropriate, portfolio. And usually these are passive investments, things like ETFs, if you've heard of them. So that would be a good place to start. But for individuals who are investing for the first time, I would say it is a very emotional and mental game to play and to maintain a sense of cool when things get rocky, which they always do with investments. And when you're working with an advisor, it's that extra step that prevents you from making any rash decisions and pulling that money out and freaking out. They're there to guide you and provide that advice and keep you on track with what you said you wanted for this money, keep you in check and make appropriate adjustments, but not allow you to panic, because it is very difficult when you're doing this on your own not to absolutely freak out and feel your stomach in your mouth when you see those numbers start to drop a little. But that's the market, right? It's up, it's down, it's up, down, but the long-term trend is up. It's always up, the long-term trend, and that's the key here, is that you need to keep that sort of long-term game mindset in place. So if you have no willpower to keep yourself in check, then maybe I would suggest speaking to an actual investment advisor to help guide you through it. But if you're ready to do it on your own, I say start small. So not stock picking. That is very advanced and very risky. But start small with those platforms that will generate ETF portfolios, for example, and make it very easy for you to dip your toe without freaking out.
Wonderful. That's really great. Awesome. So I see we're at 12:30, so that's the time. I have lots more questions, but so if anyone has any more questions for Cindy, they can connect with you. They can follow up and ask some questions. And if you go to Paper and Coin on the website, there's a lot of resources there. There's a lot of information and education for people who are just looking to start somewhere. And that's a great starting point. So thank you everybody so much for joining us. So as I said, this is part one of a 3-part challenge, the Stepping Stones Challenge. So if you haven't yet, there is a video from Paper and Coin, which is intended to really help people sort of take those first steps and understand the basics of budgeting. So if you want to participate in the challenge that's going to run all month, that's the first thing you need to do, is go and take a look at that video and then post something in your story about participating. And there's 3 challenges through the month. You don't have to do them sort of in the week that they're sort of assigned or that they begin, as long as you get everything done by the end of the month. And then we've got sort of a prize pack that includes something from each of our partners. So Cindy, again, thank you so much for joining us. This was wonderful. And thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Daniel. You as well. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Take care.